Hello, this is the RPG Crawler, and welcome to another review. This one's gonna be a little bit different in that it won't include any gameplay footage, but I'll get to the reasons behind that shortly. We'll be taking a look at the Dwarves, an action RPG game based on the 2003 book of the same name, developed by King Art and published by THQ Nordic. It was released on Steam and GOG.com on December 1st, as well as on Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Currently sits at $39.99 US with a deluxe edition available. Now, before I get into the meat of this review, I'm going to say that the reason that there's no gameplay footage is that my machine was, shall we say, a little bit below specifications. I wanted this game enough, however, that I went ahead and got it from GOG.com and installed it regardless. It did run, and while I was able to play through it, it was not the most pleasant of experiences. I was actually able to play through it from beginning to end. Just the frame rate, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting it in a video. So with that in mind, understand that this review will not touch upon the performance itself. And if there's any performance issues for anyone else, I already knew that I was going to have it be running like garbage on my system, so I can't comment on that. I'll focus on other things, though. Now, as I mentioned, this game is based on the Dwarves novel by Marcus Heitz. There's a prelude scene involving the fall of the Fiflings, and then the story takes up 1,000 years later with one Tungdil Goldhand, a foundling dwarf raised by the human wizard Lot Yonin, one of 6 grand magi that keep the land safe from the incursions of a dark magical presence called the Perished Land. He is sent out to deliver some goods on an errand, and it all goes to hell from there. Soon the entirety of Girdlegard, the land that this takes place in, is under threat, and Tungdil must gather companions and set out to save Girdlegard, and perhaps find out more about himself on the way. Now, I haven't read the book, but from what I can tell, the game follows the plot quite closely. One might almost say too closely. There are choices and subquests and the like that you can engage in as you traverse the land, but a lot of the choices seem to be false choices, either leading to a dead end or simply arriving at the same place as the other choices at the end, sometimes with minimal effects between them. This results in a kind of very linear gameplay. Even though this is a fairly decent-sized world to wander around in, there doesn't seem to be much actual replay value there in terms of exploration. The writing, however, is excellent, and I honestly found myself just about unable to put the game down, ending up playing through it in just one day. And that brings me to another flaw. While it does cover the contents of the novel fairly well, the Dwarves ends up being relatively short. Not super short, but you can get through it in less than about 12 hours, give or take some side quests, and that's presuming you don't get stuck on any particular combats like I did a few times. So thus far we have a game that, while extremely well written and one might say almost compelling, is very short and linear. Not great qualities for an RPG if you intend to play it more than once. In terms of gameplay, you have 3 major styles. There's an overworld map with a webwork of nodes that allow you to travel between scenarios. Each node represents about a day's travel, and as you go, provisions are consumed if you have them, which allows for the slow healing of wounds inflicted on your characters in battle. Occasionally, the party will come to events along these nodes, which offer a kind of choose-your-own-adventure style selection of options that can be, undertaken one by one. These can somewhat alter how your party members react to you. They can allow you to uncover additional plot points, or occasionally simply end in your gruesome demise. There are markers that represent orc hordes that slide around the map, and you can track them down and engage them, either for certain quests or for just plain old combat. Then there's exploration areas. During one of these exploration encounters, you are placed on a map and given the opportunity to navigate around the area while the rest of the party stands around. They basically just wait your return. During these sections, you can inspect areas for either clues or various bits of lore, generally marked with a magnifying glass when you mouse over them. Interaction areas are marked with a gear, meaning that you can activate something or pick something up from that area. And dialogue characters are marked with a dialogue balloon. There aren't very many of these places usually, and there's generally only one way you can go through them to collect what information you need. There's also a shortcut that will allow you to highlight everything just so you can make sure that you have everything you need before you go on to the next area. Finally, there are outdoor encounters. These are the real meat of the game and where you're probably going to spend most of your time. Prior to entering a combat, you'll need to select 4 characters from your party. Now, your party can be quite large in terms of the various characters that you can collect throughout the game. So this can feel somewhat limiting, but a lot of the characters that you can collect are largely interchangeable. Although you can select certain skills on certain level ups on some of the characters, there's just not enough variety to make this a terribly useful customization tool. Thus, you'll find that certain characters fulfill certain roles and can be switched out with other characters that fulfill those same roles almost seamlessly. Now, there's a relationship mechanic that results in certain characters regaining action points faster when they're paired with other characters that they happen to like, and these relationships can be modified during the game through the rest of the questing and the interactions. But it's not really a game changer. In truth, I only noticed it being effective in the last few battles. The battles themselves can be quite a mess. Everything's done in real time, so there's often many enemies on screen at once. There's full friendly fire as well. While you can pause and direct each individual character to use their skills, as soon as they're done, they will go back to auto-attacking and charging the nearest enemy. In the most challenging battles, you'll probably find yourself micromanaging and pause spamming just to get everything done as efficiently as possible. I'll say that the crowd-based combat is actually pretty awesome. You can charge through hordes of enemies and knock them aside. It's possible to get penned in by the sheer weight and mass of the forces, and unleashing an area of effect that tosses them around like rag dolls is actually pretty satisfying. But, as I said, there is the problem with the whole, needing to pause every so often. This can actually be pretty useful, the ability to charge through enemies and to knock them back with AEs. It can be useful in several of the scenarios as well, just because there's sections where the victory conditions don't require you to fight every enemy. And indeed, there's some where there's just an unlimited amount of enemies just constantly coming up onto the map. So your like is not just to charge through them all until you get to the one place using whatever skills you can do to scatter any that block your way. And then when you get to the particular hall or end goal, then you're considered a win, even though you may not have killed very many of them. While the micromanagement thing can get a bit tedious at times, and the supposed customization of the characters is minimal at best, there is still a certain charm to the battles that could be really good with just a few tweaks. Further, it's kind of epic to just wage into war with dozens upon dozens of combatants either allied towards you or opposed to your little party, and you feel like you're making a genuine difference throughout it all. Graphically, well, as I said, my system could barely handle it, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. Suffice to say that the animations, as far as I'm concerned, were excellent. The art style really added a lot of weight to the characterizations. In some areas, it felt more like being in an interactive animated movie, and that's actually a really good thing with this kind of setup. There's plenty of cutscenes, one might say almost too many, and that really fleshes out the world and the lore. The characters are consistent and their personalities and mannerisms are well developed. One problem with having so many cutscenes, however, is that there's a loading screen before each and every one of them. So if you're playing on a lower end system like I am, or a system that can barely handle it, yeah, be prepared to sit watching a loading screen for quite a while. Anyway, the voice acting was extremely well done, and the music was really enjoyable. Not even counting the Blind Guardian song on the soundtrack, one of my favorite bands, but they did the closing credits song. You can listen to it online. It's really awesome. But I did end up listening to some of the other tracks much longer than I actually intended, mostly due to being stuck in some areas. But I'd like to say that it never got old. I can honestly say the soundtrack is really well put together. Now, the game does have its technical issues. Even putting aside the performance issues, any performance issues you might experience because of my admittedly underpowered rig, I can't rate that. There were some weird bugs that popped up just unrelated to that. None of them were critical, none of them were game-stopping that I encountered, but they were noticeable, and some of them were a little bit annoying. There was everything from mild graphical glitches to certain quirks in combat, to issues with merchant purchases and exchanges. I played through the game entirely without having any of these bugs derail the game completely, but I did notice at least about a half a dozen of them or so playing just doing what I presume was a rather conservative playthrough. Wasn't trying to push the boundaries, wasn't trying to break the game, just playing it from point A to point B, and I still ran into a couple bugs. I understand there's been some drama with how the devs have prioritized dealing with some of the bugs on PC versus console. I'm not going to get into that more than just mentioning it as something to keep an eye on. Just be aware of those issues. So, what do I think about this game? Well, I have to say that it's possibly the best game of 2016 that I cannot recommend. Now, don't get me wrong. I adored it. The storyline was great, and the quirks aside, I actually liked the combat as well. I was compelled to play the entire game through from beginning to end, and that's rare for me. And therein, I think, lies a clue as to why I can't recommend it. Between the shortness of the game, the relatively linear nature and the lack of general replayability, and the current crop of bugs, I just think that it does not quite meet its asking price, at least for me. Now, if they fixed any one single thing of any of those problems I have with it, perhaps by adding a new game plus or something similar, or even just fixing the crop of bugs that are in the game, then I definitely bump this up to a recommended. Or perhaps you could catch it on a Steam sale or the like and get it at a reduced price. That would also bump it into the recommendation pile. As it stands, it's just too little a game for the price. Your mileage may vary, of course. And you know what? It kind of hurts me to say this, because I really did enjoy the game, even with my own rig running it like a slideshow. And the storyline was involving enough that I'd honestly really like to see a sequel. And God knows they left enough room for one. No spoilers intended, but the book it's based on is part of a series, so expect some series potential. At any rate, take that as you will. This has been the RPG Crawler with my review of the Dwarves. I'll put links where you can get it for PC and for your consoles below. If you like what you've seen, remember to leave a like, dislike it if you disliked it, comment if you've got feedback, and subscribe for more RPG content. If you want to support my channel, get early access to videos like this, and help me figure out what to cover in the future, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/rpgcrawler. Until next time, take care and goodbye.